So we'll have Marano on to talk about that. And then at 8:05, we'll be joined by Greg Burt from the California Family Council, I believe is the organization, to talk about some pending legislation in the Assembly that would guarantee that kids in the foster system have access to all the transgender treatment they need to be the transgender people they are. California, just when you think it can't get goofier, it goes goofier. 14 after 6 a.m., 1380, The Answer. It's the Phil Cowan program. We'll be right back. Answer. Thank you so much, Dave. 5 minutes past 8 here, and we are very pleased to have joining us a guest. Greg Burt represents the California Family Council, and he returns to the program today to talk about a piece of legislation that, Greg, I think, and welcome, by the way, I think everybody ought to be profoundly concerned about this. It's not just a bad idea. It's dangerous to our kids. Am I right?
That is right. Good to hear from you, Phil. Glad to be here to talk about this really crazy bill. It's a bill that is actually targeting foster care youth, and it's to guarantee that foster care youth have something they're calling gender-affirming health care and behavioral health services. That sounds wonderful. How could you be against something not so nice sounding? But until you read what gender-affirming healthcare actually means, we're talking about puberty blocking drugs that sterilize kids, and we're talking about sex change operations for teenagers.
Yeah, and AB 2119, which is the piece of legislation in question here that Greg is talking about, was, of course, introduced by members of the LGBT caucus. And the dishonesty and the outright falsehoods being spoken by these folks regarding this legislation. Listen, I have no issue with, and I do personally, but I guess from a legal perspective, I'm not going to say much about gender-affirming counseling unless, of course, they want to require it because, and let's be honest, they are requiring it because if you want your kid to undergo counseling that doesn't affirm their gender dysphoria, there are people who want to make that illegal.
Well, that's what this bill does. Gender dysphoria is when somebody doesn't feel comfortable with the sex they were, what their body says they are. And so the only kind of counseling a foster kid can now receive, if this bill passes, is counseling that would match his feelings to his gender identity. So what it means is you can't try and align a kid's feelings to his body. So if he's a boy and he feels like he wants to be a girl, you can't give him counseling to help him accept himself as a boy.
Yeah. And the other thing, and then this quote from Todd Gloria, one of the assemblymen who introduced this, a Democrat from San Diego. He says that foster kids deserve the right to these health services that reflect their gender identity so they can, and this is a quote, grow up safe, healthy, and be exactly who they are meant to be. And everything about that statement, Greg, is wrong.
No, it's an ideologically driven idea that what gender you are is completely dependent on how you feel, and your body is irrelevant to the question.
Well, and I would submit to you that if you were meant to be a certain gender, then you would have been born physiologically that gender. What they mean to say is they can be exactly who they want to be.
Yeah.
Not who they're meant to be. And the other really disturbing thing about this, Greg, is this insistence that we willy-nilly start prescribing puberty-blocking drugs and changing the physiology of people during their pubescence without any body of evidence. There is no metadata, no medical evidence as to what the long-term physiological effects of this are.
No, you're right. You give a kid hormone treatments and puberty blockers. There's no long-term studies that tie what that does to you're artificially putting in chemicals in his body, and we don't know what the long-term effects are. We do know that you will be sterilized, so you're making decisions for these young kids who might change their mind later in life.
And frequently do.
They do. There is a very famous story, 60 Minutes covered it, of a 12-year-old boy in Australia who begged his mom to become a girl, and she finally agreed, and they gave him puberty blockers and hormone treatment. 2 years later, he changed his mind. And I just want to read you a quote from him, because they interviewed him. He said, I started developing like a girl would, which is something I wanted at the time, but now I can see it was not so helpful. He said, you have an image of what being a boy and a girl is like, but when you actually experience it, it's different. And he ends up concluding saying, I guess I realized that I could be happy without completely changing who I am.
Well, and isn't that a lesson that a lot of people could learn?
No, exactly. I mean, kids don't hardly know what their gender is or what the concept is when they're young. Let them wait till they're adults to make these permanent decisions that's going to change their body forever.
Yeah. Well, and that really, this kind of goes along with state law, which would, it allows schools to decide whether or not a child can, well, and not to decide whether, but it allows schools to conceal a child's decision to get drug counseling or get an abortion from their parents. And now with an already at-risk population of young kids in the foster care program, it essentially gives these foster parents no autonomy over how they deal with these kids. Essentially, Greg, we keep moving farther and farther toward autonomy for children.
No, I know. And I actually emailed the office, Gloria's office, and asked them, now, who is holding back these treatments from kids right now? I mean, kids, this stuff is available. Who's holding it back? And here's what they said. They said foster care parents hold it back, their relatives, social workers, group home staff, and then parents themselves. You know, foster care parents, not foster care parents, the actually biological parents of kids who are in foster care, they still hold the right to decide major medical decisions. But they will lose this. They will lose that right. And no longer will a parent have the right to say no to these treatments.
Well, and really the broader issue, it seems to me here, Greg, is, and once again, folks, this is AB 2119, and I encourage you to get in touch with your local assembly member and tell them no, 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 no. The point that you just made, there may be a kid where their foster parents, their biological parents, their social worker, some group home leader will all say, I don't think you should do this, yet we have a couple of gay assembly members who think they know better than all those people who are with those kids every day.
No, it's right. And listen, this is all incremental. If it becomes established that you can't prevent a foster care kid from getting these treatments, once that's established, they're going to go for all the kids after that. And no parent is going to be able to say no, because it's like denying them, some other life-saving medical. And that's what they're going to say, that this is needed to save their life, because the kid will be either suicidal, or they'll say he'll commit suicide if he doesn't get this treatment. There's actually a case did you know that this case in Ohio?
Yeah. Children are much more likely, and adults too, if they complete the transition to commit suicide. Well, actually,
I sent you a study. There's a recent study in Sweden. This is one of the most, LGBTQT affirming countries in the world, and suicide rates are 20 times higher for people who are transgender. And that does not change even after they go through all the transition stuff.
Yeah. And you know what, Greg? I know people on the left will try and tell you, well, it's because they feel so isolated because people treat them so badly. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with their inherent unhappiness with who they are. The root of all this is, I'm so unhappy with myself, I'm trying to change physically who I am.
Yeah. No,
the very thought that we are willing to, I'll say it again, change a child's, not an adult, a child's physiology because they have some whim, some thought that they really would like to be the other gender without even completely understanding what we're doing to their bodies is criminal. It's child abuse.
It is legalized child abuse. And that sounds really strong, but what else can you call it?
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm really glad you brought this to everybody's attention. In fact, I would go even a little stronger. Greg, am I crazy to think that the LGBT movement might be in the middle of a campaign to try and create more gay people?
Well,
they want it's obvious to me now they want the world to be gayer. And more sexually non-normative.
No, I have this. I wrote an article that I published last week, and I have these three medical doctors saying that gender is not only elastic, means it changes back and forth when their kids are little. It is also plastic, meaning it can be shaped by parental approval and social approval. So you can actually change a child's feelings about their gender if you start dressing them like that gender, if you encourage them, you give them lots of social approval. And yeah, I mean, it's the kid makes the slightest comment that he likes girl things, and you got parents who rush in and start dressing him like a girl. You definitely can confuse a kid into permanently thinking he's the opposite sex.
Well, and what they said is true, Greg. You can change the way a child feels about gender, but you cannot change their gender. And this is the fallacy of modern medicine today. Gender is not fluid, and it is not plastic. It is biological. You either have the chromosome or you do not. That is what gender is. Gender fluidity is the social construct.
No, it is, and this is the building, the Capitol up there. The philosophy now is, and they're putting it into law, that gender is all about what you feel. Yeah. It has nothing to do with biology. It started last year when we let anybody become whatever gender they want, and all it takes is a signing of a paper and a check on your license plate, your driver's license. You become whatever gender you want, no questions asked.
I'm a black lesbian.
Well, they're going to do it with race too.
Oh yeah.
So if you can do it with gender, why not race? Hey, why not your eye color? Why not your weight? I mean, I guess nobody puts the truth on, nobody gets weight at the driver's license anyway. But
to each of us, Greg Burt, his own truth.
It's just crazy.
It is crazy. And I'm frankly, Greg, I am sick of this craziness trying to pass as public policy. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm sorry, it is. It is insanity. Well, it is. Go ahead.
Here's what's even more crazy. No one is saying anything. Where are all the doctors? There's doctors out there who know this is crazy, but no one's standing up. And where are the people? Why aren't these offices inundated with phone calls off the hook? I mean, we are rolling over and letting this happen to us, and it's our own fault. I mean, I can only. So I'm glad you're talking about it.
Yeah, it goes back. It's like, REI or Delta or anybody else on the gun debate or Dick's Sporting Goods. We allow ourselves to be bullied by the left wing.
That's exactly it. They have shut us up, just by threatening, our businesses or threatening to socially shun us or call us names or, and that's enough to shut us up. And we're just watching it happen.
Yep. Anyway, AB 2119, I encourage everybody to call your legislators and tell them no, unequivocally no. It is, as Greg pointed out, legalized child abuse. Thank you, Greg Burt. Always a pleasure.
Sure.
All right, take care. Greg Burt from the California Family Council. You know, you would think if folks on the left are genuinely anti-bullying, and they claim they are, then they would just shut their big mouths. Because that's all they do is bully. 22 past 8, AM 1380. Thank you so much to Greg Burt for stopping by to talk about that. You know, much the same as I think we have rather recklessly, in my personal opinion, decided to start altering people's brain chemistry with antidepressants and psychotropic drugs without a full and complete understanding of what it does to people long term. Even worse, now we're putting them on hormone treatment therapy when they are in pubescence. I'm sorry. We have, as a medical community, such an incomplete understanding of exactly what it is hormones do for our bodies. It is mind-blowing. I know for a lot of us, when you start really dealing with an issue, a medical issue, you come to realize, you know, we think, oh, modern medicine is fantastic. Look at all the things what you do. What's even more amazing is all the things that modern medicine does not know. And they don't know a lot. And one of the things they don't have a complete understanding of is the effect of hormones on the body. You know, I know a number of women who have refused to go on hormone replacement therapy when they reach menopause because they've seen what it's done to other people they know who did. It made them loopy. They became really irrational when they went on hormone replacement therapy. And I know women who said, I ain't doing that. I saw what happened to Claire down the street, and ain't happening to me. She went goofy. We don't know the half of it. And yet we want now, at least the gay community does, the LGBT crowd, they want to give it to kids. It's a mistake. It is reckless and it's dangerous. 824, let me talk with, hey, here's somebody who will know something about this, a retired registered nurse. Hello, Dina.
Good morning. Hey, I just wanted to tell you that when I was a kid, I had penis envy. And you know, I had it until I was about 14. And the reason wasn't because for any other reason that I envied that boys could stand up to pee.
Well, there you go.
So, wanting to be a boy is not necessarily a picture of homosexuality.
Look, the point that I've made continuously in this discussion about this is, if somebody says, Mom, Dad, I really wish that I was a boy. Because that's really all that boils down to is, this is what I wish I was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The attitude that, well, then, honey, we'll make you one.
Yeah, and the parents don't understand that coming out of a kid's mouth has nothing to do with true knowledge.
No, it's a delusion that the kid has. And I keep saying, Dina, the way to treat somebody who's delusional is not to indulge their delusion.
That's right. That's right. So I wore jeans. I loved the whole idea that my brother didn't have to pull his pants down to pee.
Well, it is an advantage in certain social settings. Make no mistake about it.
It is, and when you're out camping, like in Yosemite, you can't squat and pee because there are other campers around.
Well, you have to go out in the bush where there are bears and poisonous plants.
Exactly.
Oh. All right, Dina, thanks very much, honey. Good to talk to you. Let's stop talking about peeing for a minute if we could. Oh, God. But this idea that you're going to indulge your child's, and I'll call it this, a childish delusion, I think I'm really a man or I'm really a girl. You know what that does? That makes you as delusional as it does them.
Isn't that just like sometimes a little kid will say, well, I'm Superman, or I'm Spider-Man, or
there you
like
go.
That.
It's
Phil,
not
I'm
different.
5 years old. Oh, I want to play with little sister's toys.
And that's, Sean, it's the story about the guy in Toronto who self-identified as an 8-year-old girl and was adopted by some couple. If you start buying into this idea that you can self-identify as whatever you want to be, there is no limit. There is no limit. And the idiots on the left don't see that. Because, again, it's first-level thinking. Oh, well, he thinks he's a girl, we should let him be a girl. Well, what about my example? And if you bring it up to them, they're stultified. I want to be the king. I'm going to walk around wearing a red velvet robe and a crown and carrying a scepter and insist that you call me your majesty. And if you don't, I will strike you with the scepter. You have to indulge my self-identification. This is how stupid it is. And I'm telling you what, that self-identification, I am the king, isn't different. It is just as delusional as a boy saying he's a girl or a girl saying I'm really a boy. It's not different in degree or in type at all. But I don't expect anybody on the left to understand that because they're stupid. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to make of this other than lefties have to, almost by definition, be stupid to believe this crap. 829 AM 1380, The Answer. News is next. Have I been sufficiently offensive to lefties, you morons? Anywho, let me get to Jeff here in Shingle Springs. So, Jeff, you watched those Oscars beginning to end? What did I miss?
Oh, completely, yeah. Not. I don't have any desire for that stuff. But I wanted to make one of the comments with this whole transgender issue that you guys are talking about with drugging. It's okay to drug people up to get them feeling the gender they're supposed to be, but yet teaching somebody about Christianity and the Bible and so forth, they call that brainwashing and child abuse, and yet won't have any reflection upon what they're doing to the children today as child abuse.
Yeah, that's the other thing, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, Greg and I. It will be against the law to counsel somebody anything other than you can be whatever you want to be, kid, and to counsel them otherwise in any way will be considered child abuse. But you can pump them full of hormones, and they think that's stinking great.
You know, it's just another step towards the demise of the country because, you know, the bottom line is that we don't want to look at our own sinful human nature, that we're just an abhorrent race, if you will, and we are sinful beings. That's offensive. That's offensive to people. But yet we'll just continue to write laws to excuse the behavior.
Well, and listen, I am not one who, listen, if somebody tells me they're gay, I don't pretend to know why someone is attracted to another sex, Jeff, and I won't purport to say. But what I do have an issue with is that community now saying, yes, I know we're not normative, so our answer is we want to make it more normal so we don't feel like we're odd. And that's really what this is about.
Yeah.
You know you're aberrant, and I'm not calling you out and saying, you know, I'm ready to send anybody off to a concentration camp or put you in the public stocks over it. You want to live your life any way you want to live it. That I am libertarian enough to let that be, but don't tell me that it isn't aberrant, and that we should be encouraging people to indulge in that aberration. That isn't a healthy thing at all.
No, and yeah, we'll leave it there. I just my heart goes out to many of these people just because of I know that the ones that I know have been abused as children, and unfortunately, it's coming out in a different way in their older life. So, but yeah, it's to me it's unfortunate and it's very sad, and my heart goes out to that. But on another side note, you had